Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whenever we meet, thank you for being here. I'd like to start this podcast with a discipline. It's a simple discipline, but I can promise you that if you make it a part of your life, it will keep you going. I'd like you to get your hands on anything written by the great thinkers. The great thinkers, people who have aspired to think deeply, who have processed life deeply. And when you do that, it's almost as if you're handed a roadmap that will help you think deeply, that will help you deal with and process and navigate this great challenge called life. Those of you who know me know that there's pretty much always something on my desk or in my car or taped on the dashboard of my car, something that I carry with me everywhere I go that I read and reread and reread and reread and reread. And what that does is it leads to memorizing things. It leads to memorizing things. It leads to processing things deeply. Tim Ferriss is a tremendous entrepreneur and a tremendous writer. He's interviewed more people than I think I have left in my lifetime the ability to interview. And he wrote a book somewhat as a summary to many of those interviews called Tools for Titans. If you haven't read it, grab it. It's an incredible book. But there was this summary at the end of this book that sort of encapsulates habits and behaviors of the people that he has interviewed over many years. And one of the things that he noted as a common thread to people of extraordinary character, high achievement, however you want to phrase that, is that these people will oftentimes listen to a song that resonates with them hundreds of times in a row without ever playing another song in between. Just listen to it. Listen again to it. Listen again to it. When I read that, I felt validated because I'll tell you, I've done that 100 times where a flight from, Atlanta to Seattle, the entire flight was just listening over and over and over again to the same song. I think that when you have a surface evaluation of anything, you only get so much. But when you really dive into asking the harder questions, this is when we get somewhere. Well, I'm wanting to give you an encapsulation this morning. It's kind of my notes. It's my notes on another person's thinking. It's sort of like a verbal debrief into what my mind is going through when I read a certain piece of script. So we're going to start with the encapsulation, my notes, my processing of a piece of script. And then we're going to try in the consider phase of this to actually read the piece of script and reverse engineer the 12 points that I've taken from that I've thought on deeply. I hope that makes sense. Point one that I get out of this amazing piece of script is a challenge. It's a calling to know thyself. I've heard it phrased as doing the hard work. Knowing yourself is much more than knowing what you do. It's knowing why you did it. It's taking accountability for every part of your life. And boy, I'll tell you, when you really dive into that rabbit hole and really start digging to know thyself, you tend to uncover all kinds of things that need to be addressed, that need to be dealt with. If you want to grow, if you want to become a better human being, if you want to move forward, which I'm taking this as the premise that you wouldn't be listening to a podcast like this if that wasn't a desire in you. And so when you get into the hard work of knowing yourself, it's not just an analysis of what you do, it's the why behind the what. And that is where the thinking really takes place. Knowing yourself is tough work. It's diving in to your operating system, your belief system. It's truly analyzing with the eye that says, how can I grow? How can I do this better? Because I know why I did it the way I did before. I want to re-engineer my why to get the results I'm looking for. Knowing yourself. One of the 12 points that I think this script calls us to consider. The next thing that I draw from this is that it's important to have a vision. Have a vision and to trust your vision. Believe in your vision. What does that even mean? Your vision. It asks the question, where have you been, just not yet? It asks the arrival before departure question. Where have you been? What does your dream space look like? And do you believe it? And trusting that vision. Trusting that vision. The concept of arrival before departure, which is that vision arrived, being there before you're there in order to get there. This is a tough one to wrap your head around. At least it is for me. It's a concept that involves faith. It's a concept that involves manifestation. Saying you're there before you're there in order to get there involves some mental trickery. And even that can feel disingenuous. Like, why should I say I'm there before I'm there? I'm not there yet. But this process of the great thinkers, they remind us that vision, without vision, the people perish. We all have to have something we are believing in that is a compass toward motivation, toward possibility. And possibility grows into the actual belief that we're there before we're there. And somehow the brain, once that has been agreed upon, moves in that direction. It creates what we've already seen. Well, I'll tell you, you want to dive into the great thinkers. Every great thinker has taken a stab at this one. No doubt about it. But it's not enough to have this vision and believe in it. There has to be a substantive game plan that comes next. To create an action plan around this vision is the next thing this piece of script challenges us towards. That we can see and we can feel and be there. But then mentally being able to back up with focus, back up with intention, back up with awarenesses, looking for every clue and opportunity. This is what intention is. It's now I know what I'm looking for and I want it. Now I know where I'm going. So now I'm looking for the roadmap in reverse that leads me there. Everything is a clue. Everything is a possibility. Everything is seen and heard differently once you know. And so you create an action plan around your vision. You build the infrastructure. You reverse engineer the route from where you are to where you've already been in your mind. It's not enough to just have a vision and leave it there. Then you have to work backwards. And in that working backwards, the next idea that's thrown out is that there is a sense of urgency and importance and priority around those endeavors, those action items that have meaning and depth. They are leading to something. They're not lateral movements. You know, the anti-you wants us to run laterally, horizontally. A lot of energy and effort without going toward anything. But the real you, that vision that matters, has a sense of focus and urgency. It won't waste a minute. It's on task. You're being pulled toward something with an unbelievable sense of priority and urgency and importance over what you're doing. I have never met an extraordinary person that wastes time. Time is the greatest currency of all currencies. And to live as though we have forever is to live unaware. Look around. Every minute being a gift that you should not expect the next one. You should be grateful if the next one arrives. The next thing that that I think of and draw from this piece of script is the importance of patience. And I'll tell you something, that in a world and in a life that we all just want it right now. Insta this, insta that, insta. That word should be taken out of the English language, because nothing great happens insta. The patience to build, the patience to stay and believe, patience toward the circuitous route, the mistakes, patience with your inability to stay focused. Patience is so critical. Do you believe in something so much that you will stay the course? Wow. That's one of the toughest questions. It challenges me to the core. But isn't that what the great thinkers do? They challenge us on the topics that we need to think on most. Along this route of life, the next thing that's brought forth for thoughtful consideration is the importance to connect with, be open to connecting with everyone. I guess I call this section the philosophy of unlikely suspects. Who would have thought to look there? Who would have thought that that's where the key was hidden? Who would have thought that this person, this personality, this particular space would uncover a clear path to the next step toward this vision? Who would have thought? Is the thought of those who think. Who would have thought is exactly where you should be looking. And to look there has to be an open door, which means there has to be an open mind. Can you connect with everybody? Not just those you agree with, not just those that look like you, not just those that live in this same sort of little world that looks a little like yours. No. The Roger Belair quote, I travel because I might be wrong. Wow. Opening your mind to a whole different way of thinking, and there, in that place, who would have thought? The lessons delivered by the unlikely suspects. The ability to connect with the unusual, at least to you. The great thinkers make us ask these questions. This writer goes on to say, it's also on you to understand your critics. Everybody has a perspective, and that perspective has a reason. It may not seem valid. Ignoring the voices is not the right thing to do. Your critics think differently than you do. Do we draw lines? Do we draw barriers? Do we just say, well, that's them and this is me, and we're not going to get anywhere near each other? What gain is that? And so the real challenge is to understand your critics, and then it doubles down. Then the challenge doubles down to say, and give grace to the hurtful. They're hurting because they're hurt. They're criticizing because something in the interaction has felt wrong, disrespectful, unthoughtful, hurtful. They have their perspective. And just like critics should, they should make you ask the hard questions, reevaluate your motives, reevaluate your own place. The critics have a purpose. And in one sense, they're just like you. They have a perspective. And drawing lines goes and flies in the face of the last point, that people who are different and have different perspectives can offer answers to the thoughts we have yet to think. And isn't that what growth is? So listening and understanding your critics and giving room to them, as hurtful as it might feel. Growth is painful. It always has been. It always will be. Staying calm in this journey is about perspective. Staying the course amidst setbacks, adjusting the course, taking a deep breath, holding the line, believing that there's a reason for all the challenges that life faces. This is critical. When you really dive into this bucket, how do you stay calm when everything seems to be going to hell? How do you stay calm? That's the question. That's the question that's put forth. And figuring that out and creating some perspective. And I can tell you that one of the ways to offset the panic of life is to spend equal time in the bucket of gratitude. In the bucket of gratitude. I remember A.B. Label giving me a quote from something he saw or read that went something like this. I was downtrodden at the reality that I had no shoes, and then there before me a man with no feet. We tend to think gratitude is a thankfulness for everything going right, a thankfulness for everything beautiful around us. And it absolutely is that, for sure. But I also think that you can have deep gratitude and have some deep ongoing thought and be grateful for what didn't happen that could have happened. What didn't happen that was miraculous. When you start playing out the downstream of what could have happened, you recognize that there was something there. Providence was there. God was there, throwing a Major League NFL block on something that protected you in that moment, that took you out of a situation that the downstream of that could have been devastating. Gratitude is more than just, isn't this a beautiful day, and the sun and the crisp air on my face. It's the defense that's been played on your behalf. I really think that gratitude is the offset to the anxiety and the panic and the challenge that every life faces. The calm is in a belief that good still exists and that great is looking out for you. This particular great thinker also reminds us that when things get tough, you have to commit to rules that are honest, that are forthcoming. In other words, never play dirty. When people are throwing crap at you, don't throw it back. When hurtful things are coming at you, don't return that. And I think that those are parameters that you have to set up within yourself. That just because something's coming at you in one way doesn't mean it has to be returned in the same way. The higher road to dealing with life. People pretty much say anything they want these days, and they say it publicly, and they go online, and they just blast away. And let's face it, it's so easy to just want to blast back. And we live in a world that it's fire, counter fire. It's criticism, counter criticism. And what does that end up with? Just a bigger war. There's got to be some control on that, and this piece of script lends calling toward that thinking. It also next puts out a warning label. The warning label is arrogance. It's not always going to be tough. Sometimes it's all going to look like it's going well. And when it's really going well, the warning label that's put out there is, don't become arrogant. You are not all that in a bag of chips. There's nothing more repelling to me than tight pants. And at least this great thinker underscores that. And it challenges us that there's a difference between cockiness and confidence. You can be very accomplished and humble at the same time. And I can tell you that that's a common thread. A common thread when you look at who at least I consider to be the greats, just the greats of the greats. They are humble. They are humble. The next thought that is delivered in this great piece of script is a challenge to think on and understand that failure can be the greatest teacher. Matter of fact, there are those that say fail often because it throws you into a place of deep debriefing. We tend to not debrief when things are all going well, but when something goes wrong, when we really feel a sense of failure, we want to pull it apart and look at it and say, what in the world happened here? And failure makes us ask the tough questions. I'll tell you, probably the greatest growth and the greatest takeaways that I've ever processed have come out of failure, have come out of a sense that this didn't go right. This is not the way I saw it going. Failure leads to recovery. Failure leads to revelation. The work that comes after failure can become your greatest deliverable on the planet. It can form all by itself a vision and a cause because you've looked at yourself and went, wow, this was not good. What do I have to do? How do I have to change? And that change can be so dramatic and so empowering that you almost find a calling out of failure. And we all define failure differently. It's truly just when you know that this is not what I want. This didn't go the way I want. I want better for myself and the world around me. Well, isn't that the hard work? And when you do that change is what inspires the world around you. It can become your greatest deliverable. The last thing that I've been able to pull out of this piece of script is that life will have its highs, the big wins, the big accomplishments, the days where you feel healthy and invincible and happy and full. And it will have low days, about as low as you could ever imagine, and then you get in a submarine from there and go even lower. But these bookends are not a life. They're the highs and the lows. And that the meat in the middle is what has to be in play and taken seriously with perspective day in and day out. Highs and lows will come and go. What's in the middle, the day in and day out, is what has to be worked out. If your day started processing great thinkers and a piece of script like this, you may process for years as you read it. If your day started that way, I believe that there's incredible benefit to that. Where do you go to think on the great thoughts, the great challenges? It's not one place. It's in a ton of places. I'm going to read you the piece of script that I just outlined. I outlined it in my own way. I've pulled this thing apart for years. And to encapsulate it with those 12 points, oh, I'm sure there's much more in there than just those 12 points. But to me, I want this to be an example of how valuable it is to be in thought, growing and learning and processing things that others have processed before you. And as we think on it, it slowly can infiltrate our own life and our own way of thinking. And we make agreements with ourselves to move more in that direction, to have greater awareness of this or that. And this is the help. Now, although I have this on a screen in front of me, I'm going to defer to the old way with my old eyes. And I'm just going to read it to you right here. This is a piece of script that's really old. And it's a piece of script written from a father to a son. See if, as I read this, if you can pull out the points we just discussed. This is a piece of script known as If by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head about you when all are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired of waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they're gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And which is more, you'll be a man, my son. I'd like to leave you with a consider. We always leave with a consider. In the words of Dallas Willard, the gold of human character is dug from torturous mines. Consider that the gold that we all look for is going to come your way with an unbelievable effort. Travel that journey with the help, the mental, deep thinking help of those who have already mined there. And perhaps it'll be a little less torturous. Perhaps the discovery will find its way into your life and into your heart sooner and with camaraderie. You're not the only one who's walking this path. Essentially, we're all on this rolling ball of mud called Earth, trying to live extraordinary lives. Consider that. Until our next time together, God bless you.